The left will never stop their agenda to take over America. You are their enemy, and they will not negotiate. Prepare yourselves. Welcome to the Blue Shark Show with your host, Mike Lang.
Let's talk about property taxes. A lot of people, we talk about appraisals and what their house gets appraised at, and their houses are just, out of control and what their appraisals go up. But we always have to remember that no matter how high those appraisals go up, that the elected officials, your school board, your trustees, your county commissioners and the judge, and your city council, they set the tax rate, period. And when they set that tax rate, that depends on whether we pay more taxes or less taxes than the year before, regardless of the appraisals.
Yeah, and they love to throw out the tax rate and the appraisal district as ways to justify them raising taxes. But really the most authentic and honest way to relay what's happening to people's taxes is looking at the average homeowner's property tax bill, whether that's going up, down, or staying the same.
Because people, that's what they see. I look at it and say, you may have lowered my tax rate 4 cents, but I'm still paying $300 more a year, or $400 or $800 a year in taxes. So no, you can play that game of saying you lowered the tax rate 4 cents, but I'm still paying more, and you have new growth that comes in and everything like that. So, Granbury's been exploding, Hood County's been exploding, and a lot of, like Florida, Texas, a lot of the areas have been exploding. But you came up with, for Granbury Transparency Back, you came up with the city of Granbury, Granbury ISD, and Hood County. It's the proposed property tax increase.
Yeah.
And you have the city of Granbury at $325, $450 for Granbury ISD, and $4 for Hood County. And that's based off the average home value of $314,000. Can you kind of explain this graph or this picture for us?
Yeah, so the taxing entities are required by law to put out notices in the local newspaper for what's going to happen to the property taxes for the upcoming year. We just had the whole round of people doing their protests and whatnot, but now we're getting ready for next year already, the budget cycle and all that stuff. So what I did was I just looked at their notices, and the city of Granbury said, the average home is actually valued a little more than $314. That $314 was for GISD, but the average home inside Granbury's looking to pay another $325 just to the city, and then another I rounded up. Guilty as charged. They could call this fake news because technically it's $448.43, but I went ahead and took the liberty of just calling it $450 for simplicity's sake. And then as a nice contrast, the county, they're only looking at about $4, and this was before the county had put theirs in the paper. Their notice in the paper actually said $1, but I was just going off of what Becky Kidd and them were saying at the last commissioner's
Right, and I heard that, yep.
Yeah.
So they were talking about $8 or $7, whatever it was, and they kind of split the difference. Now, going back to Commissioner's Court, they still have to vote on it, and so does the city and the school board. So this may drastically change. It may stay the same. It may even go lower. I doubt it'll go lower, but
Could go higher, too.
yeah, so we'll see where it goes. So, when elected officials say, hey, I lowered your property tax rate, 4 cents, so we've lowered it every year I've been there. No, you haven't. Well, yes, you lowered it, but I'm still paying more because of my evaluation, right? So
But they know the valuation when they set that tax rate.
So they're playing the game.
Yeah.
It's a shell game. Okay, let's just call it what it is. It's a shell game. They know the valuations go up every year, so they know they can lie to the public and say, we're reducing your taxes. When they know the reality is the taxes are still going up, and this is a game they keep playing, and it's a game we keep sending back to the legislature saying, fix this problem, and yet they never come back with a fix for it.
Well, and really the fix for it is holding our local elected officials accountable. They're subject to what goes on down in Austin, and they can lobby and stuff, but in my mind, if we had elected officials, local elected officials like a board of trustees or city council that would say, hey, we are vowing not to increase the average homeowner's property tax bill, not even by $1, that would make a drastic difference and stop the hemorrhaging that's going on.
If you like the show, you like what we are doing, please go to thebluesharkshow.com and sign up for our member-only access at $4 a month. And that's at the local level. And you're right, on the school board issue, because let's separate the city and the county, because they're, they use ad valorem taxes, they use sales tax, they use different, areas of revenue. The state is really involved in the ISDs and the school districts. So, the state can come in with more money to give the school districts, and the way it's done without getting into the weeds is the school districts use their local money first. So all the ad valorem taxes that go in for school taxes, they use that up first, and then they start using state money. And then you have Robin Hood and all kinds of things going in. But it still goes back to the same thing. The local elected officials set the tax rate.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about is tax rate. So when we hear the local elected officials say, once again, I lowered your taxes, no, you did not.
Yeah, you may have lowered the rate, but I always use the analogy of the used car salesman that's got you back in the finance room, and they're manipulating the numbers between this and that, but at the end of the day, you're still walking out paying more than you expected.
Well, I have a crazy question. It kind of scares me now. What would the increase for GISD be if the bond would have passed?
That would have been another, based on last year's valuations, 20 cents, so another 15 cents on this tax rate. You'd probably be looking at about an $800 increase over last year. I mean, I'm just going off the top of my head, but for the ISD, it's interesting because when I put this graphic out, we had a trustee, Courtney Gore, come out like, hey, where did he get the math on this? It's like, you guys put a notice in the paper.
Their notice.
It's y'all's numbers, and that's one of the very few instances where they have to tell the truth is in those notices they're required by law to put out. Of course, they put it in the worst possible font where it's difficult to read and, whatever, but it's interesting to see people dispute their own numbers.
When you get into some of this, especially with the school district, you start looking at M&O, which is maintenance and operation. And I know this is kind of, like I said earlier, going into the weeds. And then you look at the INS, which is the debt. And it looks like Granbury ISD is going to go down in the M&O, but they're going to increase their INS, their debt, to pay off the debt earlier. So that's that kind of trick game they start using when, in fact, all we have to remember is we pay more, the citizens pay more at the end of the day.
Yeah, and, when it comes to how they're manipulating the numbers on this, there's no getting around the fact that their budget, if they adopt the tax rate that they put in their proposal, their budget will go from $75 million to upwards of $90 million. You can't.
That's right.
Increase,
that's new growth and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, you're going from $75 to $90 million of ad valorem tax revenue. It's like, don't tell me you're cutting taxes. You actually increased it by a significant amount. And if you look at the last 6 years, since Barbara Townsend, the school board president, has been in office, the average homeowner's property tax bill in Granbury ISD has increased 80% in the last 6 years.
And I believe that because we've been here for 20 plus years, and I've seen it go up, and I've heard the local elected officials say, once again, I have not raised your taxes. Our tax base has been 43% or 39 cents per $100 valuation, but the appraisals go up, so therein lies the game. They get everybody mad at the appraisal district, but when it comes time to setting the tax rate, they're up, what, 15 million?
Yeah, somewhere around there is where I've got them.
So be conservative. Let's say 10 million.
Yeah.
It's still 10 million more than they had last year.
It's a huge increase. Yeah.
And you're paying more. Now,
everybody's paying more, and that's renters included. A lot of people, some people say rather that, well, renters don't pay property taxes. They do indirectly because their landlord pays property taxes. So this affects everybody. You've got one-bedroom apartments in town right now that are going for over $1,000 a month. And that's for, a very small one-bedroom. It's ridiculous.
So when it comes time for taxes, and they're going to all vote on it, the Commissioner's Court's going to vote on it, I believe, this Friday. City Council will be voting on it soon. So will the City of Granbury. And I don't see any huge changes in any of these. Now, maybe the county may change because the judge was on vacation during these votes that it was 4 on there and it was 2-2 or 3-2 or, whatever it was. So we may see a change there, but do you really think that our elected officials with, especially the 3 up for on the city, on the ISD, do you think they're actually going to cut taxes? I don't. I don't think Barbara, Paula, or Mark will cut taxes.
No, and here's why. And we talk about this a lot because it's a recurring theme and it's very prevalent. The school board of trustees is tone deaf, is all get out. And their justification for adopting this tax rate was, well, the bond failed because people were upset that we were already, $90 million in debt. And it's like, no, the bond failed because you were asking for $500 million
In debt, eventually, right?
Yeah. So it's just another time that, they're going to increase that revenue however they have to. And it's sad to see, but, we get the government we deserve, and we can change that at the ballot box this November.
With everything going on with inflation and people being hard hit and COVID, which was a government, fiasco to begin with. And we need to do a show on COVID to just bring it back around to show how ridiculous this all was.
The government broke your legs and they gave you a cast and pat themselves on the back.
And how the trustees failed and how the commissioner's court minus Dave Eagle failed and all the others. But Dr. Blocker, Jay Webster, that whole line,
And the city manager crying at the mic that one day.
Yeah, this COVID thing's, we'll do a show on that. But getting back to the taxes, you guys watch. The citizens need to watch and see where their taxes are. And some people may say, I don't care, just raise my taxes. It's okay. The school deserves it and this and that. Well, let me tell you, with all this stuff with the bond, pushing $500 million in debt with everything, and with the school books, the porn and the, age inappropriate stuff, and now you have the clubs going on, and evidently the principal doesn't know what's going on, and nobody knows what's going on. Things are just running amok. You've got security issues now the first few days of school with traffic and things like that. What else?
You've got the safety loops that they didn't move forward with when they could have for their summer projects. We've got all that parent pickup traffic that blocks up Davis Road and over by some other schools, 3 different schools. They just kick the can on all this stuff. And, there's a whole laundry list. We've got, back in my office, I got the list written down, but there's about 10 things right now that is really major issues with GISD. Going back to security, you've got the way that we are hiring a lot of teachers that don't have any classroom experience through the Texas Teachers Alternate Certification thing, which is basically people with degrees in basket weaving or, liberal arts or whatever, with zero time in a classroom setting, expected to walk in and take control of a classroom on day one. There's a whole laundry list.
And that, that goes to the board of trustees and people in the community, they know the trustees, they worked with them, they know the city council members, they know the commissioners and the judge, and everybody wants to be nice. Everybody, they want to be respectful of all the elected officials, but there comes a point in time where, and we'll take the 3 that are up, they may be good people. You may know them away from work. You may know them away from being a trustee. You may go to church with them. You may do certain things with them. But when it comes down to being a trustee, and just the 4 or 5 things I listed earlier with the books, if it could be just the books alone for me. But I'm not going to vote for any of those 3, just for that alone, let alone everything else that's occurred. Now, you may be a great person, but you're not meant to be a trustee at this point in time because you failed at your job. Not just fail, but if you were in there really fighting, saying, we have this problem, we're going to fix it, we're going to fix it today, not in a year, that's a different story. But this keeps going on.
Well, and we've been saying for years, we need more transparency and we need the school board to be proactive. And over the years, the incremental improvements that have been made in those areas have been because of the conservative activists around here have dragged the members of the school board kicking and screaming to get the meetings videotaped and to unmask the kids and to, make sure that we, get the kids back in the classroom when all those kids were failing doing the stuff from home. Like you said, Barbara, Paula, and Mark Jackson have just, they're not.
Been asleep at the wheel. So when it comes time to look at the taxes and look at who's running, and we're doing kind of a tax thing right now, but the Granbury ISD, $450 more. City of Granbury, $325. And for a lot of people in Granbury, when the average medium home is 314, 300 something plus, there's people that are like, that's no big deal. And then you have people that, it is a big deal. So when you look at it, as a totality of everything, and what our elected officials do and what is there for new growth and how much they're going to get, millions and millions more, then how about this time we at least go with the no new revenue rate, which we all know is a little bit more than it was last year. So even if you go with the no new revenue rate, it's still a little bit more, but at least you can say you went with the no new revenue rate, right?
Ideally it would be a no net increase.
Yes.
And, they say, well, how can you expect the government to keep doing this? When people's families have to cut their budgets, the government should have to too. And that means making some tough choices. And we go back to one of the problems with the school board and the board of trustees. We have a very top-heavy administration when it comes to Granbury Independent School District, and there's some tough choices that could be made to free up a lot of funds and help alleviate the financial strain that the trustees themselves are putting on the families here in Granbury. And I know some of them like to say, well, if it were up to me, we wouldn't build any houses less than $500,000. But, that elitist mindset is not very popular amongst the people. And that's the type of stuff we're going to be voting out this November.
It needs to be. It really does. That mindset needs to go away. And they need to remember, and we just had that election with Liz Cheney got just pummeled, right?
Oh, man, she got blasted.
She forgot who put her in office. Amongst other things. But, when an elected official forgets that and decides to do that, you've got to remember who put you in office. So when it comes time for this election cycle, you've got to remember that not only do we want people that are great with your money, they're fiscally responsible, but these books, the porn, the clubs, that should be the only reason that need to know to get rid of these people.
Yeah, and, something else with the ISD, I thought this was pretty funny. They just released this report talking about how all their campuses went from, the lower letter grades to the higher level grades. Oh, we did all this improvement, which there was some marginal improvement, but TEA changed the way that the schools are graded, and they eliminated D and F. So now you're either A, B, or C. And if your school is rated a B or a C, it's not really good. They're just grading everyone on a curve because they screwed all these kids up with their COVID lockdowns a couple of years ago.
And, I saw some of that on Facebook and social media, and you're right. You do away with D's and F's. And then
So wait a minute. So you can't fail now. Is that what you're saying?
The worst they will do is a not graded.
Oh, so if you fail, they're just going to say, we're not going to grade
It's not even incomplete.
See?
You're not even graded. Yeah. So everybody's pumped up, right? And after COVID, and all this stuff. So they're coming back now, and now it's ABC, and
that's it.
They're pushing everybody up, and Mike Morath, the TEA, is part of this and responsible for part of this. So
I hope Governor Abbott doesn't reappoint him. He needs to go.
Well, I think he's going to stay, but
probably.
It's the teachers love him, the administration loves him,
the lobbies,
So it's all, and we'll do a segment here in a little bit on teacher shortages and American Federation of Teachers, and so stay tuned for that.